NFL Week 17. Important games coming up these last few weeks. Playoff implications, teams trying to stay alive. Erik, I imagine as we talk right now on Sunday morning, you're probably a little frustrated as a Lions fan. Officiating happens, bad calls happen. Man, what happened last night has to be one of the all-timers. Honestly, that was one of the all-time bad calls. And what's crazy is like we could look back on that game. It could be a real domino effect based on what happens the next couple nights. Like that could be a game that ended up costing the Lions the number 1 seed, a bye in the first round, and major domino effect through the playoffs. Man, that was a pretty crappy call.
Excuse me, it was awful. And I mean, the bigger thing is now the game next week where the Vikings come to Detroit is meaningless for Detroit. So how much are the starters going to play? Because you obviously don't want anyone to get hurt. And now that's going to affect another team's playoff chances because the Lions won't be giving a full effort now because they're not going to be playing for the 2 and possibly the 1 seed. It's awful what happened because Campbell told Allen before the game that they're going to.
Told him what was going to happen.
And
he told him.
For Decker to come up and report and him just get the number completely wrong.
There's no excuse.
I don't think it's any rigging or anything.
No, me neither. It's a mistake.
I just think he messed up.
Me too. I'm very rare on the that was a shady thing. I think it's more just human error, right? We're humans most of the time. I think these guys are just making mistakes.
And the thing is, unfortunately, with the world we live in, if you mess up with your job, there's usually something to be paid.
Consequences.
He should not. Probably suspended, maybe, but definitely should not be able to call a playoff game.
There were 3 primetime games that gentleman was a part of. The crew, the guy who made the call, Allen, this year. The 3 games were last night, the incident that happened, the game with the Chiefs and the Bills with those bad penalties at the end with the pass interference when Mahomes got furious. And then there was a game earlier in the year where I believe one of the teams had at least 10 penalties called and another had multiple, like just not good hold of the games, especially games that are in standalone games. You need those best crews out there. I'm not a Lions fan. I've rooted for the Lions the last couple of years because I think a lot of people have, and they like the underdog story after all the years of struggling. That was bad, man. The Lions played well. They played there was a lot of things throughout the game that they could have done better, right? But you put yourself in a game against a good team when you're a 5 or 6 point underdog, and that game's supposed to be close. Yeah. So 1 or 2 or 3 plays here and there, that's the difference. You go down the field, you execute. You've got this great play for that situation. You execute it. You win the game. That was bad.
I mean, look, it is what it is. It's bad. You can move on, but there's going to be a lot of little, like you said, ramifications just because now this Vikings-Packers game tonight is the factor playing game. Just because if the Packers lose tonight, they're out. But on the day, you know what? I'm wearing it. We're villains, man. The Lions are villains, dude.
There you go. And
now the short end of the stick, and we just got to move on and compete, man.
I was going to say, Erik, last night, man, that happened to your Lions. LeBron, obviously, behind the 3-point line. They called it a 2 in that game. It's like the referees looked at both you and me and said, let's just screw these poor guys over. I mean, the poor Lakers, they never have had anything go their way in their entire lives, or LeBron, just like your Lions. I feel like we're very much the same in that, right? All kidding aside, that
the biggest sport news yesterday was my Pistons finally got a win.
I was gonna say they snapped the streak. You could see it coming. They played a good game against the Celtics last week, just a few days ago, and they almost beat the Celtics for the first time at home. So that one was a long time coming. Anyways, just had to talk a little bit about last night's game, and then a quick mention, dude. What the hell is going on with Joe Flacco? How crazy is this right now? This is unbelievable.
At the end of the day, it just kind of comes down to coaching,
right?
What
Stefanski, man,
able to do to put him in a position to succeed and what his comprehension level, what he's able to do is just insane. I mean, it kind of opens up your eyes to like why did Mayfield struggle so much in this offense? Why did Deshaun struggle to start this season? He only basically played one really good game in my eyes, and that was the game against the Ravens.
Completely agree.
And now Flacco comes in, he's just lighting it up. But at the end of the day, money motivates. And when you're getting paid that much money to just win a game of football, that's going to be.
And isn't it different? How different is it that we're talking about this and the vibe everybody has around this Cleveland team now? I mean, if this was Deshaun Watson playing this well, people wouldn't be excited or care. But because it's Flacco, everyone's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy old man coming off the couch. He's throwing for 300 yards every week. There's this like excitement about it. People kind of want to see it keep going. If it were the other way and the Browns were doing well with Watson, everybody would be rooting against this. It's just so funny to see the difference.
It kind of makes you think, okay, how good is this team if they had everybody healthy? Chubb stayed healthy. Their two tackles stayed healthy.
Or even if just Flacco was the guy taking – I don't expect this to be a forever thing. But if you just had one guy playing at this type of a level or even little less than what Flacco's playing at right now, and you had him consistently through camp all the way through and not 4 different quarterbacks this year, right?
And DPR was supposed to be this like interesting rookie type guy. Flacco's 8 levels above him. Like, it is insane. And Flacco literally just came from the couch. He's even money now to become the comeback player of the year. It's just kind of crazy. Like, all these memes, especially like coming out now, like this guy practicing against Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, like he's going to be worried about Sauce Gardner. And then the one where it looks like he's falling asleep on the bench. He's like, he looks like a dad who has 4
That was
kids.
so funny. I know. He's just Yeah, they got to tap him and do the oh no. And then someone said, you know what his response was? Oh, I wasn't asleep. I was just resting my eyes. Right? Like the old dad response. So that was great. A little bit of a recap of what happened over the last few days, but now let's dive into what's ahead. Remember, because the bowl games tomorrow, no Monday Night Football.
No Monday Night Football. They're going to announce there's going to be actually 2 games next Saturday, which is kind of 2 standalone games.
So everything today will finish up week 17, and then next week we'll have all sorts of permutations. Are we going to be back normal on your schedule next week? For me, I think the holidays I'll be able to get back to normal, I think, next week. So
TBD on my friend.
So
TBD.
Yeah, we'll keep it up on your. We'll see what's going on your end.
Intense 8 and under soccer playoff game.
There we go. Okay, so we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. Let's get going with the Cardinals at the Eagles. Remember, we're looking at DRF Sportsbook for the betting lines. If you're in the state of Iowa, sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account. Use the promo code FAST300. We'll also talk a little parlay play at the end of this, how you can get a little action today or any day you want by playing parlay play and putting together a few props. Eric, let's go Cardinals at the Eagles. Man, this was one of these games where I have such a tough time with a few teams at this point of the year wondering what their motivation is. And one of those teams right now is the Cardinals. They're 1-7 on the road. They were just down by 21 against the Bears. They did cut it to 8. Earlier in the week, Kyler was not practicing because he was sick, so I'm not sure what level we're going to get from him. The Eagles now on the flip side, they're still trying to get the number 1 seed. They have a legitimate shot there. They, again, didn't look incredible or dominant. They won a game against the Giants that they should have won by a lot more. They have played a very tough schedule, though, so far this year. But at this number in this game, is there anything you want to do with it?
It's really hard for me to trust the Cards. I was on them last week. Gannon's decision at the end of the game when they're on their own 33 timeouts and the 2-minute warning remaining when the Cardinals defense had only given up 3 points and you go for it. That was really hard for me. That kind of showed me that they're just kind of
playing it out right now.
Emotions are just, like you said, playing it out. That was obviously a punt situation with how well your defense is. Gannon went for it. Obviously, the trends here say that support the Cards. Murray as a dog is 62% ATS. Road dog, he's 75%. Hurts has yet to cover a number over 7 this season, and he's only 44% covering a number of 7 or more in his career. Eagles defense was pretty good to start the season. It's like 23 now, DVOA. Obviously, they're missing Gannon. I don't trust Matt Patricia, who's now taking over the play calling responsibilities. But on the flip side, after that close to the Cards game, I cannot trust this Cardinals team at all. They're the first team on my no bet list. So at the end of the day, this is just a pass for me. Maybe looking to see DeAndre Swift props just because the Bears are bad covering the run. I cannot hear you, my friend.
Yeah, well, I think you had said the Bears, but we're about to get to the Bears right now.
Sorry, I'm at the Cardinals.
Cardinals, yeah. Because the Bears, on the flip side, are really good against the run. And man, when you stop it and look at the Bears this week, Eric, what they've been doing recently. So this year, they're 4-3 at home. They're 4-2 in their last 6 games overall. The 2 losses they have in those 6, they lost at the Lions in the game that they blew when they were up by 14 points with just a few minutes to go. So a game they absolutely should have won. And they lost by 3 at Cleveland. So they're 4-2. Their 2 losses are to 2 playoff games that they should have beat. They should be 6-0 in their last 6 games. And you look at this team, they sort of have an identity now. Right? They you know what they are. They stop the run. They put some pressure on the quarterback, and they can beat you with Fields running the ball and have like a little different attack at you offensively with a few playmakers there. So for a team that we didn't know what they were for the first 6-7 weeks of this year, we do now. They made a few adjustments. Their defense is much better. They make it really hard on you to try to run, force you to pass, and then it's easier to defend when they can put a little pressure on you too and make you throw the ball. This team has kind of sneaky been good. And on the flip side, so is the Falcons. They've lost so many close games this year. There are versions of this season, Eric, like permutations of this year that were played out where these two teams both have a lot more wins than they do. And they didn't need to be playing that much better. Just a few bounces in games would have changed the season for both of these teams. They do both have a small outside chance at the playoffs. The Falcons a better chance than the Bears. Falcons need a win here. They'd need the Saints to beat the Bucks, and then they'd need some things to go their way next week as well. Any strong opinion in this one? Falcons at the Bears. The Falcons do come off playing one of their better games. They beat up the Colts, and Bijan had 120 yards on 19 touches.
First of all, I just saw Kyler Murray walking in to play the Eagles, and he's wearing a Sid Crosby jersey, old school Penguins.
Oh my gosh!
Kind of wants me to take him there.
I know. I was gonna say that makes you want to play them a little, right?
I did 2 bets in this game with the Bears. The first one, obviously, Bijan Robinson over 21.5 receiving yards. Bears are the worst in the league defending the running back in the passing game, are allowing 59 yards per game to opposing running backs in the passing game. Robinson has gone over this 2 of his last 3, 4 of his last 5. He's third on the Falcons in targets and receptions, 4th in yards. Also, I took the Falcons here plus the 3. Season's on the line. Again, I mentioned like last week I talked about on my show. Eberflus before last week had yet to win a game as a favorite as a coach. That was the first time he won the game as a favorite. This Bears team really doesn't know how to win. They were up big going into the second half. Cardinals had that game. They only allowed 3 points in the second half. Fields is only 40%. ATS is a favorite. Heineke is starting. He'll take some chances down the field to exploit the Bears' defense in the passing game. And I really think Smith is at the point where right now where he knows he's coaching for his job and is going to do the best to get the ball to Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. And I think the Falcons secondary will be able to limit DJ Moore. I'm on the Falcons here plus the 3.
Let's keep moving along, Eric, to the Panthers at the Jags. So, far as quarterback right now, Beathard?
Yep, Iowa's finest.
Okay, so Beathard will be starting because we saw this number earlier in the week around 7. That was more of a Lawrence number. Now that it's Beathard, it's in the 4-ish range here. The Panthers actually come off of playing their best game of the year. They move the ball offensively. I'll say their best game under Bryce Young. There was a game earlier in the year that they played pretty well with Andy Dalton at the helm. But over the last 2 weeks, Bryce Young is graded Pro Football Focus quarterback number 6. They scored 30 points last week. They hadn't hit 20 since week 6. This is a big game for the Jags too, because they're still the number 4 seed in the AFC. They're in a 3-way tie for the division here. A lot can change for them in the next 2 weeks. I don't know if I take what Carolina did as much as get excited about it from the Carolina stance as to understand that it was more of a Packers defense thing. And I'm going to get to them in a minute, how bad their defense has been. I mean, I didn't get the number. If I was playing Carolina, I would have liked to have gotten it earlier in the week at 6.5 or 7. So for me now, it's a stay away.
Agree 100%. I like the Panthers here, but with the Lawrence news, the number is gone. It opened up at 6. It's down to 4 right now. Peterson is a favorite, is only 47% ATS. When the number's 3 or higher, he's down to 43%. Jags are good against the run. The Panthers are filtering their offensive game plan around CJ Hubbard now. I doubt he's going to be able to generate any offense that puts some pressure on Young to make some throws. And with this number already down 2 points, it's hard for me to trust Young. This is just an ultimate pass for me. On the flip side with the Jags, can you really trust CJ Beathard to win with margin?
Let's get to the Rammies at the Giants. Massive game for the Rams. They are in playoff positioning right now. They control their own destiny, and they've got a game on deck with the 49ers next week. So you cannot have a slip up here. And this, to me, Eric, as a fan, this feels like a trappy kind of game, even where you're playing for a lot, because you've had a stretch of good play for the Rams. They now have the 49ers on deck, and you've got this Giants team that may be a little harder to get up for. But Tyrod's been really good this year. He doesn't turn the ball over. I can't get a feel for what to expect from them in this spot. It feels like we've seen so many different versions of this Giants team this year, through early in the year with Jones, and then Tyrod for a few games. And then we had Tommy Cutlets, and now we've got back to Tyrod. But this one's a stay away, or the Giants at 6.5, because this number bounced around a little bit too. This one moved a few points earlier in the week. The Rams, keep in mind, with Stafford, Kupp, Nakua, and Kyron Williams, those 4 players, when they are healthy, the Rams are the number 1 team in the league in EPA per play. And whether or not he's getting a little bit older, Aaron Donald still has 16 more pressures than any player this year. So think about that. He's double teamed all the time, and he's still getting pressure on a ton on the quarterback, and he's drawing all that attention to help open things up for other guys. And then you've got Stafford. Eric, this has been his best year, honestly. I don't know if enough people are talking about it. He has the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the league. That's not even been a thing he's ever been good at. Nobody's even he's always been a high turnover play guy, because he has the highest big time throw rate in the league too. He's got a cannon of an arm, so he can make these big throws, and then sometimes he'll get a little too bold because he knows he can make throws, and he'll make a bad decision. This year, he's making all the big throws and not making the bad decisions. He's been incredible. He is one of the reasons why this team is a double-digit win team and not a 4-win team, honestly.
Also, like, what McVay has done the last 5 to 3 games is he's just kind of, he's gotten a lot of scrutiny before for being quote unquote too cute. And
that's fair, right? That's fair scrutiny.
He's just kind of said, hey, you know what? I have Puka, I have Kupp, I have Williams. Those guys are literally touching the ball 70% of the time. That's all he's doing right now. He's just giving his best players the ball. And sometimes football is that simple when you're able to take advantage of it. But like you said, I feel the market is a little too high on the Rams right now.
Yeah.
It's the selling point. I got the Giants at 6. Obviously, I didn't think it was going to tick up to 6.5. Teams on a 5-game ATS winning streak, like your Rams are at 49% against the number. 5-game winning streak ATS, and a 2-game winning streak, 44%. Sandwich spot with the 49ers on deck. The ball as a dog is 64% against the number. Tyrod Taylor as a dog is 61%. And the reason I like taking these veteran quarterbacks in when they're dogs is they're good for 3 to 4 drives a game.
And they don't make mistakes.
Yeah,
he doesn't turn the ball over.
3 to 4 drives, and that's all you need in a game like this. The Giants defense has been playing a little bit better. They're going to blitz. Stafford does struggle with pressure on his face. So if they're able to get in his face, maybe you can get them into some turnovers. That's been the key for the last couple of games. Your offensive line has been playing so cleanly. It's given Stafford time. Also, indoor West Coast team traveling cross country, playing outdoors in the early game. Even though the weather's not going to be that bad, I'll take the Giants here.
Sports facts. I'll step in here. The only difference is that game even if LeBron hits his shot last night, the Lakers still would have to go to overtime. Your Lions would have won the game. Yeah. I mean, they would have been up by 20 with 20 seconds to go, but you're in the lead. Like, that takes an actual win away. The Lakers still would have had work to do. They should have gone to overtime, but then they still would have had a 5-minute quarter to play. They still could have very easily lost that game. Your Lions, man, that was a bad one. That one is going to sting for quite a while as we move to the Raiders at the Colts. So since the last 6 weeks, the number one defense based on DVOA is the Raiders. The Raiders have allowed 15.3 points per game in 7 games under Pierce. They won a game last week against the Chiefs when they did not complete a pass in quarters 2, 3, and 4. That is unbelievable. They still won the game. It has to do with the way these guys are playing on defense and how hard they're playing overall. They play for this coach, and there's rumors out there that they have not made any decisions on bringing him back yet. I think these guys are going to continue to try to play really hard for him. And at over 3, I'm absolutely on the Raiders here. Now, I will mention, this is one of those spots that's not a good spot for the Raiders travel-wise. They have historically been awful, and you were just pointing out the kind of the West Coast teams going East Coast. Like, this is not a good spot for them. But this particular group of guys right now, the way they're playing with their defense and Crosby, I think they can keep this game within a field goal here and keep it close. And I'm just not sold on the way the Colts are playing right now. I think their coaching staff did a really good job of getting them to this point, Eric. But now when things are elevated a little bit and everyone steps their game up, I like Minshew a lot. But can he go to another level? Their offensive line didn't play very well last week. Their wide receivers have been banged up. They don't have their playmakers. Now they're trying to lean on Minshew even more. The Falcons just kind of exposed them a little last week. So I think at over 3, I like the spot for the Raiders in the number.
Yeah, I really wanted to fade the Raiders here, but once it's got to 3.5, this is just stay away from me. I don't really trust Gardner Minshew to win with that much margin. Obviously, Pittman comes back, which is big for the Colts because of how much Minshew relies on them. But you hit the nail on the head. This defensive effort that the Raiders are giving has just been top-notch. Hats off to Crosby. He's able to get to the quarterback. A lot of pressure is going to be on the Colts defense to stop this Colts offensive line, to stop him. Flip side, no Josh Jacobs. This is a Zamir White game. But this Colts defense has been good as soon as they got Stewart back from his PED suspension. I don't know if the Raiders are going to be able to move the ball. At the end of the day, this is just a pass for me.
This next game that we will discuss is an important game, one of the biggest of the weekend. And this one is a pass for me because I wanted to fade both of these teams, Eric, coming off their wins last week, because everybody saw the Ravens get that big win over the 49ers. Everything went their way. The Ravens deserve to win that game. They outplayed the 49ers. I think in almost every version of that game that would have been played, they probably would have won that night, that game, but not by that much, not necessarily in that way. A few tipped passes, few balls bounced their way, and then it was inflated. For the Dolphins, I played the Cowboys last week. I didn't talk to you. I imagine, I think you probably did too. Did you play them as a dog against the Dolphins?
I didn't bet that game at all.
Okay. So if you were a Cowboys fan or someone who bet that game, the first drive, Dallas is driving down. Really good drive. First and goal at the 2. Pollard gets a nice handoff. All he has to do is just run to the pylon. Instead, he tries to cut and do some weird twist. He gets stopped, and then the Cowboys fumble the ball in the next play. And they don't score. And I just immediately raised my hand and was like, there is no way the Cowboys are winning or covering this game. And the entire game still had to be played. But you know what I mean, Eric. You know that feeling when you have a team or a dog and there's one play early in the game and it takes points off the board. And honestly, that ended up being the difference in the game.
Yeah. That kind of showed how much the Cowboys miss Zeke, that play right there. I mean,
You're right.
Nah,
and I don't want to interrupt you, but I'm only interrupting you to give you credit because you pointed this out very early in the year. You did not like the idea of Pollard as the every down back between the tackles because it was mainly because we really hadn't seen him do it yet. And it's a totally different role. And man, when you watch the Cowboys use Pollard this year, and that play to me was like a microcosm of their year, he looks like a totally different guy.
Yeah, he's just not the same player at all. In terms of this lane, look, I look at it like I need to fade the Ravens here. Jackson's a favorite, 48% against the spread. When the number's 3 or more, 44. When it's 3.5 or more, it's 41. So he's kind of in that Patrick Mahomes realm right now. As a favorite with these numbers over 3, he's just not covering. And look, I know it's a Southern team traveling up north in December, but it's going to be 50 degrees with no wind in Baltimore today, if you believe it or not, which is absolutely absurd. Mozart is out. This means more run for Achin, who's a little bit more explosive, faster than Mozart. He's going to be able to take advantage of some speed issue that the Ravens have. Also, you look at Tyreek Hill's career against the Ravens, 7 receptions, 105 yards per game. Ravens really don't have anyone in the secondary speed-wise that's going to be able to keep up with Tyreek Hill. I like the Dolphins here at 3.5. At 3.5. I may have got them at 4. Let me double check. But I like them here. I got them at 3.5. Anything over 3, I absolutely like them here. Just playing the trends against Lamar and fading them after that game.
Yeah, what scares me is like I immediately was watching that game with San Francisco and then right away was looking, okay, who are the Ravens going to play next week? I want to fade them. They scored, I believe, on 6 consecutive possessions against the 49ers. It just felt like one of those games where things were really all bouncing their way. The reason why I'm just not going to play either side here is because what's scary is that the Ravens have kind of done this, though, most of the year. Like, they've kind of crushed some of the better teams. And then the next week, they've kind of been right back. They've led almost all year. So they've blown a few big leads late in the games because they're always leading. It's sort of inevitable that they're going to. Then on the flip side for the Dolphins, I think they sort of got the bounce with that turnover. They were very good on the down to down. Like their success rate was excellent against Dallas last week. They couldn't finish any drives. Why I'm a little worried about not just immediately playing that side is because of some of those injuries. You mentioned Mostert. The offensive line is what concerns me a little. They've got a few different guys that are all banged up. Armstead, it's not funny, but I think Sam, one of the guys on the Pro Football Focus podcast, was sort of laughing about it the other day and said, this is the point of the year when you look at the injury report, and for Armstead, it should just say everything. Like he's got like knee, ankle, and back on the injury report. It's like, oh my gosh. It makes me realize, Eric, sometimes why I'm not a football player. I did a little ice skating last night with Stephanie. It was a Christmas present. I realized she likes ice skating, so we went out. I am sore as can be from my hour-long ice skating session last night. My back, my ankle, I got a blister on my foot. I don't think I would hold up all that well in some NFL football.
I'll tell you what, every day I feel like an old man now.
I was going to say the last couple of weeks for you, right? Yeah. They've been a little scary, and we start to get that like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling a little bit older right now. Eric, Motorball, baby. Some Pistons talk. Motor City Ball, Pistons talk. Says my boys are back making a late playoff push. One of the things I thought was funny, my guy Kuzma, who I love me some Kuzma, was one of my favorite players with the Lakers. He was ripping on the Pistons the other night on social media. Like, man, nobody wants to be the team to lose to them. And it's like, Kuz, you guys have 5 wins. What are you talking about? You have 3 more wins than they do. I don't think you should really be talking too much, Kuz. Can't wait for the Ravens to lose in round 2 after the first round bye. That's another thing that we've got to remember with them, right? They got sort of a monkey to get off their back come playoff time as well. Eric. They've got to prove it. Really, with Lamar, they've only been in the situation a few times, so it's not a massive sample size yet. But some really great quarterbacks have had to deal with things like this, right? This was a Peyton Manning thing for a long time.
Yep. Having that first round bye, not getting that rhythm, it's cost them before in the Titans game too. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of plays out with them in what the matchups are, because the AFC is absolutely loaded. That could be the Bills. As crazy as it sounds, that could be the Bills.
Old man complaining about Detroit sports. I did not hear Rex Ryan this morning. What? Come back at us. What was it? Was it defending the Lions, or was it against the? Like, what was his rant? So let me know, because I've heard Rexy get on a few rants before, sometimes about feet. So we'll see if it was pertaining to feet and his obsession there with the foot fetish. Pats at the Bills. You were just talking about the Bills, and man, 14.5 is the number in this game for the Bills. The Bills are very lucky to still be alive for a chance at the division. If they win and the Ravens beat Miami, they're playing for the division next week against Miami. 2 fumbles last week from James Cook. The second one led to a Chargers go-ahead field goal in the fourth quarter. You got the Patriots, who, for as bad as they've actually been better with Zappy, but they're only averaging 16 points per game. That's better with Zappy. Their defense, all year, though, they've still been fine. They're number 11 in defensive DVOA. Eric, I don't know why Buffalo gets up in this game and worries about pouring it on when they have a big game next week that could be for the division, and the health of Josh Allen is important. I think they get up and hand the ball off in here. Their offense hasn't been clicking on flying on all cylinders to be convinced they could cover this number anyways. This just feels way high.
Yeah, I want nothing to do with this game. I'm just going to sit back. Zappy got me my Gesicki plus 600 touchdown last week, which was great. But in terms of this one, I want nothing to do with it. Zappy has looked better. He's doing a better job running the offense. Elliott's looked better. Flip side, you're right. How much of the Bills going to be motivated for this? Historically speaking, Allen at home does cover these big numbers. But with the issues to the defense, how banged up they're going to be. If they get any separation here,
why are they risking anything?
He's not going to risk any injury. He's going to hold those guys.
Or any creativity, right? Why are you going to put a bunch of things on film?
This total of 40.5 and 14.5 spread, it says to take the under. But look, I'm not going to do anything.
Where do we head next? We are going to the Saints at the Bucks. Big game for the NFC South, because if the Bucks win, they are in. Now, Tampa's going to quietly been playing pretty well. How about Baker this year, making only $4 million this year? Jared Stidham, the backup for the Broncos, making more money than Baker is. Over the last 2 weeks, Baker is graded quarterback number 2 by Pro Football Focus, and they control their own destiny. Tampa beat New Orleans in week 4 at New Orleans 26-9. They're up to number 12 in DVOA overall. They're playing the Saints, and here's who the Saints, I've had a tough time with them all year. What are they good at? Who are they? This Saints team, they're number 18 in DVOA. They're number 20 in offensive DVOA, and they're number 17 in defensive DVOA. So they're not above average in anything. Here are their wins this year, Eric. Week 1, they beat the Titans by 1 in that game that Tannehill was awful. I can still have the vision in my head of him overthrowing the tight end down the sideline that would have won the game. So they barely win week 1 against a bad Titans team. They beat the Panthers this year twice. They beat the Patriots. They beat the Giants. They beat the Bears with Bagent, not even with Fields. And they beat the Colts. At the Colts is their best win of the year. Any team that's been somewhat competitive, they've lost to. They lost to Tampa, Houston, Jacksonville, the Vikings, Atlanta, the Lions, and the Rams. That is unbelievable. And they're still in play for the division. They don't have a win against any good team. The only team they beat was at the Colts, who has up and down weeks. I wouldn't even say they're a good team. I'd say they've played well this year and probably played above their head. But, man, in this game at under a field goal, I'm cooking it up with Baker.
No, I got the Saints here at +3. That's what I did here. I still like them at 2.5. Mayfield as a favorite is 34% against the spread. Todd Bowles as a favorite, 46% against the number. Derek Carr, road dog, 57%. Since 2005, divisional road dogs are 54% against the spread, 100 games or 500. In the same time span, divisional road dogs in the South are 59% against the spread. Over the last 6 weeks, the Bucs are starting to filter their offense through Rashard White in the passing game more and in the running game. But Saints are 2 DVOA defending the running back in the passing game. I think they're going to be able to limit this Bucs offense. Also, looking at the Bucs defense, I just don't know who they have that can stop Kamara. Kamara, I know he had less than 100 yards back when they first played, but that was his first game back from suspension.
Last week, I'm glad you pointed him out because he was going to be someone I mentioned in parlay play. This could be a real squeaky wheel game for him. He had this year, from like a fantasy points perspective, Kamara was in double digits every game of the year before last week. And I know that because last week was the fantasy playoffs and I needed him and he had a low game. This could be a game where your whole season on the line, you want to go down with your best, right? Feeding Kamara.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a game where he gets 20 touches. I definitely like them here. Also, I did Chris Olave over 66.5 yards receiving. Bucs are giving up the most passing yards per game to opposing outside wide receivers. Olave has gone over this total 4 of his last 5 games.
It's funny. Sometimes it's just not supposed to be your week or year or whatever it is. So last week I had a decision to make in my fantasy matchup, Olave or Addison. And it was on, remember, the Saints were playing on Thursday. Olave was hurt and he hadn't played the week before. And so I'm sitting there going, damn, I don't want Olave to go in the game, play a couple plays and come out. I'm going to play Addison instead. So what ends up happening is Olave plays, has a great game. And then what I was thinking was going to happen to Olave happened to Addison. Addison played like 2 plays, got hurt. He had 1.2. And so Olave scored 23 points. So it ended up being like a 22-point swing in a game that I lost by 18 in a matchup. In that same matchup, I had 2 other guys. Montgomery got banged up and he left the game. I also had Cortland Sutton, who got a goose egg, a 0, because he got a concussion and left the game. I had 4 players leave the game injured and I made a bad decision. It was just one of those ones where I was first place in that league and I had a really good year, but bad managing last week. Just one bad decision and then a few bad bounces go my way, go against me. And that ended up costing the fantasy spot there. But I think this is the squeaky wheel. That was the worst week for Kamara. I think they bounce back, just like you said. So I'm leaning with the Kamara props. Eric likes the Saints. Eric, we play and we handicap the game so similarly in that we don't really play favorites very much, almost never. I can't remember like ever the fact you or I giving out more like a 3-point or more favorite, like a 3.5. But this is one of the few times we've got a beer bet straight up. So we've got straight up here. I'm going to be cooking it up with Baker. If I win this one, you'll get at least 2 or 3 Baker memes via a text or via social media. So get ready for some of those. Saints at the Bucs, big game for the division. Let's continue along, Eric. Is this just the 49ers beating up on the Commanders bounce back game after last week? Because the one thing that for me that bothered me about the 49ers this year was just that they weren't having any of those games where they would get a bad bounce or two. You know, it's like every week it seemed like everything was going perfect for them. And then it all came crashing down last week. So now I'm sort of fine with the 49ers again. I just wanted them to have one of those games that everyone has, because everybody was already anointing them as this team that can't be beat. There's no way we can stop them. And we saw every team is mortal. It can happen. Every team can make some mistakes and every team can get beat. But now they go play on the road against a Washington team that has the second worst EPA allowed. I have no idea what kind of effort we're going to get from this Washington defense whatsoever. And I think the 49ers are going to feel like they're going to feel like that bully that wants to just pick on the guy that they are way, way bigger and badder than this week.
My note on this game, Commanders defense is awful. I want nothing to do with this game.
I mean, this would be
literally like
it would not shock me if San Francisco wins this game by like 30 or 40.
And also Powell's back to starting. Remember, they announced Risber's
and they jerked him around too, right? That messes with his confidence too. Like, he was pulled not because of injury, because he was struggling that bad. They benched him, and now he's back in. That was okay with Zach Wilson, because remember, Zach Wilson got centered when he came out. They centered him mentally. Aaron Rodgers helped with the centering. I don't know if Sam Howell got centered quite the same from Jacoby Brissett. So a couple other questions from the folks out here. Went against Ford and Lamb this week in the fantasy finals, up against it, but making the finals was fun. Thanks for the help this season, Eric. Man, I agree, Eric. For all the folks that have followed along the last few years, your draft guide and your shows on Tuesday, the recaps and all the help, that was a lot. In fact, Dave Weaver called me yesterday because he was trying to call you to ask me some help about a fantasy matchup. He was in like the finals of a guillotine league, and he said, "Okay, I'm trying to call Etoft Eric right now, but let's see if you can help me out." So we tried to talk it out the best we could and see if there were some spots for him.
I got a hold of him, but I'm on babysitting duty. 4 kids under 10 is fun, let's say.
Woo!
Got back to him a little while later. He went against Lamb too, so he's up against this.
Yeah,
so
he's in some trouble. Niners huge, but that's what's difficult about a game like this. And with all of their weapons, like, it's very rare where it's a well-balanced game for all these guys. It's usually like it's a Debo game or it's a Kittle game, or generally it's a McCaffrey game. Is there anyone who you think?
I would lean BA, because it seems to me Debo comes through in the quote-unquote
big games. Yeah. He gets up for them a little bit more.
Well, they tend to use him a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In games like the Eagles and even the Ravens game, they were looking for him a little bit more. In these games against the tier 2 team, I don't want to say that, but the lesser teams, they tend to feed Ayuk a little bit more.
So the one point I want to mention just before we move on from this game, the thing that I will say for the 49ers, which is a real thing, and this is something that I have noticed and was kind of going along with one of the reasons why the last couple of years I'm like, I hate the 49ers, or I want to play against them, or they're not that good, or they're not as good. When Shanahan has been coaching the 49ers, I'm sure a lot of you saw this stat on the broadcast, or if you've probably seen it all throughout the week. When they are trailing by 8 or more points at any time in the fourth quarter. So 8 points is only one score, one possession. 8 points or more at any time in the fourth quarter, they are 0-37 since Shanahan took over. And not only are they 0-37, but in that time period, every single team in the league, except for the 49ers, has come back from a game when they were down by 8 in the fourth quarter. So there is something to this, that with Shanahan, he's so much better of a coach when they're up or when they're on an even game script. When teams know they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit more, it does take away some of the creativity they do, some of the really like creative runs, some of the movement and the pre-snap stuff. Like, that's a real thing for every other team in the league to have come back. I mean, Eric, with as good as their team is, and as good as the playmakers they have, and as good of a play caller as he is, you figure when you do something 37 times, 1 or 2 times accidentally by default, the balls just bounce your way, right? There's a turnover, it gets thrown to you, so that's a weird one to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Just because my thing with Shanahan is this. When stuff's going on script, I like him.
Absolutely.
But when stuff gets a little awry, he's a little hard to trust.
Yep. And he does remind me in different ways of some of these coaches that we've talked about that get a little bit cute. Like there is some Sean McVay stuff in there with him when the games get a little tight in these big games where they start to kind of go away from things that they've done well. And that's what frustrates you. You're like, we've done this really well all year, kind of stick to it, but you can feel the human in them too sometimes when the games get big. And it makes me just happy to see that everyone's got flaws. That's all I wanted. I just want everyone to have flaws as we get ready moving into the playoffs. Eric, let's go Titans at Texans. We've got Will Levis versus CJ Stroud. Levis is back for the Titans, but this team is just 1-6 on the road. The Texans, they have not played well now for the last month or so, but keep in mind, they have missed Stroud a couple of times. The defense has played solid. These two teams actually played 2 weeks ago and Keenum started and they held Henry to his worst game as a starter. They shut Hopkins down too. But at 5, I mean, this feels like a Vrabel number or
like I didn't expect this to move up
me neither
as much as it did. CJ's missed the last 2 games. The fact he missed that many games with the concussion and they're in the middle of the playoff race kind of shows you how bad he was actually hurt. How much is that going to linger? Vrabel has a dog, 57% against the number. Getting 3.5 or more, 60%. I really don't care who's playing quarterback for the Titans, Tannehill or Levis, because when you look at this Texans defense, they're bottom 10 in total defense, bottom 10 in rushing defense, and bottom 10 in passing defense per DVOA. So I think whoever's playing quarterback is going to have success moving the ball. Titans have a good 2-headed rushing game with Spears and Henry. They'll lean on that. This is going to open up the play action pass. And if you look at the Texans this year, they've really struggled defending the play action pass. I know the Titans are banged up on the defensive line, but with how much his offensive line has struggled, I think they're going to be able to get to Stroud, get some pressure in his face. And I like the Texans here. I like it even more here at 5. Also, McCaffrey is minus 700 to score a touchdown today.
Wow, minus 700. Okay.
On Caesar Sportsbook, he is minus 700.
Unbelievable.
I mean, principal play alone.
You got to go all the other way, right? Jeez. Oh my gosh, because there's a lot of reasons why they don't. And a lot of other playmakers, a lot of other guys. What it gets, man.
Minus 7.
I don't think I've ever seen something like that on a wow. So Texans, number's too big here. Sportsback says, I noticed last night, Eagles, Niners, Lions, Rams. Doesn't think the Lions are the Cowboys are physical up front on the defensive side. Yeah, I think so too. In the middle of the defense too, especially.
Yeah, I talked about that on my show after the Bills game. That's the big thing that stood out to me. That this Cowboys team cannot stop the run. It was a big issue. They drafted Marzi Smith from Michigan, and he just hasn't been able to elevate and stop the run defense. If they play a physical game like they did last night and the team just leans on the run, they're not going to be able to withstand those body punches throughout the course of the game. If the Lions defense was a little bit better, I know they played great. They only allowed 20 points, but the plays that they did allow to score touchdowns were just horrendous.
Scary. They're scary. They're blown. Yeah. That's what's scary about them. The Lions have a template for a team that could beat San Francisco. They could beat Philly. They could beat any of those teams. How many times out of 10 could they do it, right? Or like in that one game, will they? But I agree with you. You watched the Lions last night and you feel like they're closer than we thought a few weeks ago, but they still do have some of those holes. I think this is in response to the Shanahan stuff, but he wins. I think if he does, I completely agree. He wins. And when you get the Super Bowl, the narrative changes completely. It shifts. For right now, unfortunately, the narrative is he blew a 10-point lead in a Super Bowl. And as a coordinator, he was the coordinator of the biggest collapse in Super Bowl history.
Yeah.
So those are the two things right now. But he absolutely puts everybody in such great spots. What he's done with Purdy, what he's done with all these guys. And you know what's funny? Like when Sam Darnold came in the game last week, people forget Sam Darnold is a good quarterback, like on paper. You know, he checks the boxes you want. his decision making wasn't great and his processing and stuff. But when he dropped back and threw a pass down the field, people went, "Oh wow, like he's got a way stronger arm than Brock Purdy." That was one thing that you forget is that, wow, Shanahan continues to do this with a guy like Brock, who Brock's processing and decision making is what I've been so impressed with. That's an intangible, Eric, that we can do all the draft work and prep in the world, but you just don't know how someone's going to be when they get in an NFL huddle until they do it.
Yeah, I mean, what he's able to do is insane, and it kind of makes you wonder with all the weapons Iowa State had with him, Bryce Hall, X Hutchinson, how that team didn't.
I know. Wasn't Campbell the coach, right?
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be that really hot, kind of buzzy coach around that time too. Things have changed a little for him. As we move to the Steelers next, was that the most Tomlin-esque win that you've ever seen from the Steelers last week? Everybody gave up on them. They played a couple bad games in a row. They make the change to Mason Rudolph, and then Rudolph takes them on a 92-yard drive, and then an 80-yard drive on their first two possessions. They get up
what those veteran quarterbacks do. They just lead them in drives. Those are his only two really good drives of the game.
Yep, and they scored another touchdown on their fourth possession, but they only needed to go 14 yards there. They're 8-7. They're trying to keep Tomlin over that 500 record streak. What concerns me a little in this matchup is just scheme-wise, they were bringing in guys off the couch to play in their secondary and in their back seven last week, guys that were retired, players that haven't been around much, and they actually came in and played well last week. Is that something that you can count on game to game now when you're on the road here playing Seattle? On the flip side, Seattle has not been beating teams with margin recently at all. And their last two games, remember, I mean, they had a tough schedule, but then last week they had a game-winning drive. In fact, their last 2 weeks, they've had game-winning drives by two different quarterbacks to help them win 20-17. Same score, both weeks, two different quarterbacks. Same result, and now they got a shot to make the playoffs here. I think this number is too high, though, for this game. This, to me, felt like it should be just closest to 3 as possible, maybe even 2.5.
Well, yeah, I took the Steelers here. Tomlin, the dog, 64% ATS. As a dog on the road, 60%. Dog versus the NFC, 61%. I know everyone talks about Tomlin off a loss. Well, Tomlin off a win as a dog, 76% ATS. Steelers defense is 9th best defense per DVOA that Geno Smith has played in the last couple of weeks. And I think they're going to be able to limit the Seahawks offense. Joey Porter is turning into a shutdown corner. I talked on my show last week how DK isn't getting the ball enough. So I think the Seahawks are going to be able to struggle to move the ball. Plus, let's not forget, Seahawks, their defense, bottom 10. Total defense, rushing defense, passing defense. I think they're going to be able to struggle to get stops against the Steelers. You can run on this defense. I think it's going to be a big Jalen Warren and Najee Harris game. And plus, like I said, Mason Rudolph, 3 to 4 drives. That's all you need in a game like this against the bad defense. I took it at 3.5. I'm a little surprised by this line movement up to 4.5.
Now, the one question I will ask you, because it was a very valid question that people were posing throughout the week, will Rudolph's magic work as well now that we're beyond Christmas? Was that just a Christmas weekend thing, Rudolph coming off the bench? Because that was kind of like the story of Rudolph, right? He wasn't supposed to be the head guy. He comes off the bench. He's got to lead Santa's team of reindeer. That was with Mason last week. Now that Christmas is over, we're going to get some of that Rudolph New Year's magic. We'll have to find out a little bit later on today, but Eric and I are both banking on it. We're both on the Steelers side there. I think if you can get this anywhere over 3.5, I'm fine with that number, taking this one. I think it's going to be a close game. We go to the Chiefs at the Broncos, flip side, Bengals at the Chiefs. Here we go. I was getting ahead of myself. So for Jake Browning, who's been starting for the Bengals, his 2 worst games by far have been against Pittsburgh. He has 5 turnover-worthy plays against them. In his other 3.5 games combined, he has 1 turnover-worthy play. It's been really crazy. Like Pittsburgh, he has not been successful against at all. Everyone else, he's been pretty good, like above average, and not making bad decisions. What I'm worried about in this matchup for the Bengals is that their defense is actually 30th this year in EPA per play allowed. So they may be able to help the Chiefs wake up a little bit. But man, we keep saying that with the Chiefs. Everybody keeps assuming that this team is just going to wake up and bounce back. They're not. They're not going to look like the team that we thought, or the old Mahomes teams from years ago. Could they maybe look a little better than they have in some past weeks? Sure. They've got the Bengals right now, and then next week they get the Chargers. So, yeah, they could look a little bit better. Last week, Patrick Mahomes was quarterback number 37 on passing grade. 37. There were 37 quarterbacks that took a snap last week. He was dead last of all of them. It was the worst graded game of his entire career. And what's funny, he wasn't close to Trevor Siemian or Nick Mullins. He was worlds behind them, just to give you an idea of how bad he was. In weeks 10 through 16, Patrick Mahomes is quarterback graded number 26. That's a 6-week sample size. He's not been good. He's had drops. He's had other issues. And that one really bad game pulls him down and pulls his average down quite a bit because it was that bad. But since week 8, this team is 3-5. Since their bye, they're 2-4. Should they be favored by a touchdown right now in this situation, Erik?
No, but the flip side is the book out in Browning.
Yeah.
We need to remember, like, even though their offense has struggled immensely, the defense of the Chiefs has an excellent coordinator and Chris Jones. If they're up here, we give to Browning and limit him. What's that going to look like? Are they going to be able to move the ball? Obviously, no Jamar Chase, which hurts the offense. Bengals are worst in the league, right up with the Denver Broncos defending the tight end. Great matchup for Travis Kelce. I don't know. I really want nothing to do with this game. Like, obviously, I'm a little annoyed with the NFL, the fact they didn't flex this bad boy out and put a different game in there. But this 4 o'clock slate is rough.
Ugly. It's ugly. As we move to the Chargers, and I'm with you. I think you can only be Bengals or nothing in this game. Chargers at the Broncos. So when they announced that Russell Wilson was going to be benched, weird situation. I don't know quite the specifics of it.
I mean, they're saving money. Like, the injury clause this is a money thing, but obviously
the NFLPA does not like the way they handle that when you have a player that's not playing horribly, right? Like, he was playing below average, not awful. Like, if we're ranking the quarterbacks in the league, I'd say Russ was in like the 16 to 20 range, like that's probably where he was playing. Not nearly as bad as some other quarterbacks in the league, but not worth the money you're paying him. That's what it comes down to, plain and simple. Whatever you feel about this situation, I think it seems a little shady. You could tell all year Sean Payton didn't really like Russell Wilson all that much. I mentioned they're paying Jarrett Stidham more than Baker Mayfield's getting paid to be the starter. So they brought this guy in and paid him $10 million for 2 years. I don't know about the result of this game, but I bet one thing. I bet the Broncos team total at 20.5, because I feel like Sean Payton is going to try to prove a point in this game without Russell Wilson and try to prove a point that he would have been as well off or better off with Stidham. I think he's going to try to get this team into the end zone at least a few times. I don't really trust I don't know if I trust the locker room overall in Denver right now, because I think this might have bothered some guys. It may have split some, but I feel confident that they're going to be able to get 21 points in here. So that was my play. The Broncos team total in this game. Other than that, I have no idea what to do, because the Chargers did get the fired coach bump. They almost beat Buffalo. And what was nice just about that individual game, Erik, the defense was doing the things that their defense was supposed to do under Staley. They were limiting big plays. They were just keeping everything in front of them, not getting beat for massive plays. If they would have played like that most of the year, it's exactly how I felt watching my USC Trojans in the bowl game against Louisville. You're watching them going, We didn't need to have a good defense. We just needed to not have one of the worst defenses in the league, and we would have been okay. And I felt that way about the Chargers last week. But can you play them in either spot in this game?
So what I did here is I did Gerald Everett over 37.5 yards receiving. He's gone over this total his last 5 games, and 3 games he did at Easton Stick. And those 3 games with Stick, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 41 yards. Those were his average. Broncos are the worst defending the tight end this season, and the Vance Joseph defense has been historically bad defending the tight end. So I just played the Everett prop here of over 37.5 yards.
And we get to the final game. Remember, no Monday Night Football. So this one's Sunday Night Football. The Packers at the Vikings. Eric, the Packers defense is so bad right now. They have had 5 different quarterbacks this year that they've played against have their highest graded game of the season. Baker, Bryce Young, Fields, and DeVito all had incredible games. Like, they made those guys look awesome. That's how bad their defense is. And now you've got Jair Alexander, who's suspended because of that weird coin toss stuff before the game. They don't have anyone to defend Jefferson, but you're going to have Hall playing quarterback. For the Vikings, no idea what to do. Another thing that you hit on, and I will give you a ton of credit, because when Josh Dobbs was playing well, you kept saying, the stuff in the film, it's going to come out soon. It's not going to be a long-term success for him. And we saw that they have Dobbs who has a tough time moving the ball and that makes some bad decisions. Mullins can move the ball, make some horrible decisions. And now they're just going to throw someone else in there. Any opinion one way or the other on Sunday Night Football?
I mean, this just comes down to which team do you trust? Obviously, for me, who's invested in the Vikings under 8.5, I need the Packers here to win this game because I think the Lions are just going to fold up shop tomorrow and just try to get no one hurt. The last couple of games, the Vikings have struggled defending the run, and that's what I'm going to go to here. I'm going to go Aaron Jones over 50.5 rushing yards. He's gone over this prop 2 of his last 3 games. Must-win game. I expect LaFleur to realize, hey, I need to lean on Aaron Jones here because I have Jordan Love going into hostile Minnesota in a division game. They can be run on. I'm just going to give the ball to Jones. I'll take Jones over the 50.5. This game was at 3, and then with the Hall news, it dropped. I know a lot of people, you just don't know what you're going to get. He played that one game against the Falcons, didn't look that good. Dobbs came in. Dobbs let him down the field. Is that we're going to see? But it kind of speaks to how bad it is in Minnesota, the fact they're going to this rookie in a game they need to win in a hopes to extend their season.
Yep. I no strong opinion here on this one. We'll say, based on how bad that defense is, it's not going to be the worst spot ever to bring in a quarterback that doesn't have a ton of experience, because that defense has been making others look good. We had a question, Eric. I know how you're betting the semis. Gino, how are you? I'm dogging it. Honestly, I really like Bama in the game. I would play Washington plus the points. Eric, what were yours? Repeat to everybody do you have strong opinions, or what are your sides heading into the?
I did both first half unders, and then I got the tied at 2.5, and then I'm going to bet the Longhorns, but I expect more money from the Huskies to come in, so I'm just kind of
going to wait.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of wait. I mean,
what's your buy? 3.5. I mean, are you fine at now if it was around 4?
I'm fine at 4. But I mean, one shop already has it at 3.5, so I think it's going to drop down a little bit more.
Sure.
Just because the reason I like Texas by far has the best offensive line.
That's the trenches, man.
And I think the thing that they're able to do is they're just going to be able to lean on them, and then we're going to see that defensive line that from Washington eventually tired out. But I will say this, as crazy as it sounds, if I were to stack up the teams because of the Longhorns' issues in the secondary, which team could exploit that the most, it would be Washington. So out of the 3 teams, the one I have the most fear that the Longhorns could lose to is Washington. But look, I have Washington at 35-1. I have Texas at 25-1 to win it all. So I'm sitting in good spots. however that game plays out.
Yeah, it'll really come down to the trenches, right? If Texas is able to impose their will, then it could be a long night for Washington. If Washington's speed, especially their ability to tack down the field, like you're saying, and hit their secondary, and where I get a little worried is in a close game with Sark and some of the decision making, because I think he's another one of those guys that we were kind of pointing out where really good play caller, play designer. He's done a fantastic job recruiting. I will give him all the credit in the world. I didn't think that he would ever get Texas to the level that they're at right now. I didn't. He didn't show that before. Obviously, in his last stint as a head coach, he had a lot of problems. He had a lot of personal issues, but he's done a really nice job with this team. I still worry, though, in a game against a good team in a close matchup, does he make the right decision some of the time? So with margin, I would go against with some fun football coming up over the next 24, 48 hours here. Erik, buddy, let's give out a parlay play or two play. We want to mention, if you're on the website parlayplay.io or you're looking for some action today, check out this website. You can parlay props. You can parlay fantasy points, which is one of my favorite things. Erik, talk to us about some of the plays you're looking at today.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, obviously, the player props that I bet today and just parlay them together, which is Bijan Robinson, his receiving yard over, Gerald Everett, his receiving yard over, Chris Olave, his receiving yard over, and Aaron Jones, his rushing yard over.
Awesome. For me, my main play on there, and I would say throw them in. I'm going to still build a few more right now, but throw them in with some of Erik's plays. I went Kamara over the 15.5 fantasy points. I think it's going to be a big game for him. Erik was talking. When your season's on the line now, you got to give your best players all the touches. You got to give your best players all the looks. I think it's going to be a big game for Kamara here. So, Sports Facts, thanks so much. Appreciate you hanging out. And yeah, how bad is the bowl lineup to start the day?
It's awful. I mean, like, we
got to make a change. Do we next year or in years moving forward, can we just move it to like January 1st? That's when the portal opens, right? Yeah. And then you have maybe a month to open the portal, or maybe you have a few weeks, then it closes, and then you get can we have a couple times like that to where it's just not wide open, wild west? Because some of these games, Erik, what does the game yesterday when Georgia wins 63-3, what does that do for either of those programs or for any of the people watching the game?
Yeah, it does nothing.
Nothing. There were 14 players from Florida State that didn't play, right? Like, the Pop-Tart Bowl was awesome. That was amazing. That poor Pop-Tart got eaten alive afterwards. I was seeing some great memes. We had the Mayo Bowl. They're getting creative with the bowl games. We got to figure something out, because with the new transfer rules, it's just some of these games nobody cares about. There's just no point in watching them. And that's a bummer, because we love this time of the year. We love bowl season.
It just seems to me like when we were kids, Jesus, I sound old.
I know.
You know what I mean? It just seems like there was a lot more times when people played in them. But now we have to remember Jake Butt. For those who don't remember, Jake Butt was the top-rated tight end, and he played for the Wolverines. And then in the Orange Bowl, he went out there and played, and he tore his ACL. And he went from a first-round draft pick. I think he was drafted like 6th overall. And his whole future was gone. He never was what he was supposed to be. This guy was supposed to be like the next, receiving, like the next kind of like Tony Gonzalez type guy. Not a good blocker, but a good route runner. Think Dalton Kincaid is right now. But because he tore his ACL, was never the same, came back, tore his other ACL. So it's stuff like that. These guys are thinking of their long term. If you're going to be one of those first-round draft picks, I'm fine with it. But when you get a guy like Milton from Tennessee, who's going to be an undrafted free agent opting out of a bowl game, that's when the stuff gets a little crazy.
Yeah, totally agree. Sports Facts, old man complaining about Detroit, Brewers baseball Mike. Shout out to all of you out there. Motor City Ball celebrating. Pop that champagne, baby, for the Pistons. Hope all of you have a fantastic Sunday. Have a very, very happy New Year. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and Erik all throughout the year. If you're following Erik's content, if you're following mine, I appreciate you watching our shows, our live streams, listening to the podcast. Every time you comment or you like or you ask a question, it makes the shows a little bit better. When you like and share the shows, that helps them and it helps us quite a bit get the content out to other people that might be able to see it and follow along. And it helps put a few extra dollars in our pockets. You guys have all helped me pay a lot of my bills with my family through the years. So thank you very much. I hope you all have a great, great new year. Eric and I will be back this week. We'll figure out exactly what the schedule is as the holidays now are starting to wind back down. So hopefully we can get back into a nice groove for the playoffs moving forward. But one more week, Eric, we've made it to week 18 again this year. Good luck, buddy. Time to rock and roll for the rest of week 17.
Good luck to you, my man. Let's make some money.
Good luck, everyone out there. And we'll be back again in just a few days talking plenty more football.